Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Krista Jeck, and I'm the president of the Lakeville Area Chamber of Commerce, and wanted to remind you that this webinar is brought to you in a series in partnership with the Apple Valley, Burnsville, Lakeville, Hastings, and River Heights Chambers of Commerce. And the goal of these webinars is to address business concerns and questions that we have as we navigate through the pandemic. And I want to give a special thank you and shout out to our sponsor this morning, Doherty, Melinda, Solfest, Hills, and Bauer, PA. They are a full service law firm, and their attorneys work collaboratively to help clients achieve their legal goals. Their approach to client service is personalized and it's responsive. And their experienced lawyers will work with you personally to help you explore your legal options and to take the course of action that is right for you. And again, just some housekeeping items. If you've been with us before, you know that everyone is muted, but you are welcome to ask questions in the chat feature and we will watch that. We're very excited. We've got Nicole Blissenbach here with us today. Nicole is the Assistant Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. And the reason that we asked Nicole to join us is because we've had so many of you ask us questions. Now that we're back into this, back to school and back into a hybrid model, what does that mean for us here in the business community as we're navigating back to work and trying to make things right for our kids? So Nicole, thank you so much for being here with us today. Again, I know she is going to, she's going to go through a few things for us in terms of both employee and employer rights and obligations. And so Nicole, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it away.
Okay, great. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great, because I did lose you a little bit during your opening, but
okay.
If you lose me, just let me know and
okay,
I can repeat.
Sounds good.
So thank you so much for having me. Good morning. Happy to be here, and I'm happy to kind of go through a bunch of stuff that we talked about that hopefully I can shed some light on what may still be murky and some questions that people have about what employee rights are in the workplace, what employer responsibilities are, and kind of give some answers to those things. So I always like to start out these webinars, these presentations with a little bit of an overview of the Department of Labor and Industry, because I think sometimes it's so easy to get the different state agencies mixed up. You know, what does DEED do? What does DLI do? And so on and so forth. What does Commerce do? I mean, all very different things, but all very intermixed at the same time. So we at the Department of Labor and Industry have 4 main business units. We have our labor standards and apprenticeship. Labor standards does a lot of what we think of when we think about wage and hour laws. So they enforce the Minnesota wage and hour laws, so overtime, minimum wage, child labor laws, as well as the Women's Economic Security Act, some of our other leave laws that we have in state law, and things like deductions from paychecks, things like that. Apprenticeship is pretty self-explanatory. They help run the state-approved apprenticeship programs. Another business unit at the Department of Labor and Industry is our Minnesota OSHA programs. And these are 2 programs that I think have been pretty front and center in COVID times. We have our OSHA consultation unit, which provides consultation with employers on making sure that they have proper safety mechanisms and protocols in place. In COVID times, they've been answering a lot of questions about how to put together a COVID-19 preparedness plan, and working with employers to make sure that all of the different requirements are met on that front. And then OSHA compliance is really the enforcement side of OSHA. They enforce workplace and safety standards in all workplaces, both public and private, in the state of Minnesota. We are a state program aligned with the federal OSHA system. So some states are under federal jurisdiction. We have a state program. And then our other 2 units are construction codes and licensing, and workers' compensation. And then of course, workers' compensation has come into play a lot in COVID times as well. During the end of the regular legislative session, there was a bill passed that put into law a presumption that that COVID was workplace related for certain occupations, including first responders, some childcare providers that were providing childcare under the emergency order. Excuse me. So in workers' compensation, I can kind of give an update while I'm here too. We're approaching about 5,000 workers' compensation claims that list COVID as the workplace illness. So we've been keeping track of those, keeping track of the numbers as they come in, which claims are related to the presumption or have the presumption attached, which claims do not. As expected, we are seeing a higher number of claims accepted that do fall under the presumption than claims in industries or occupations that do not fall under the presumption. So we are tracking that. We will give a report back to the legislature in January on that presumption legislation. So that is a little bit of an overview of what the Department of Labor and Industry does. And, I'd like to flag just a couple of the things that oftentimes people think we do, but are in other agencies. So unemployment is a big one. We get a lot of questions about unemployment, and while we are able to answer some of them, it's not, unemployment is all run through the department, through DEED. And then one other area that kind of has a lot of overlap between the Department of Labor and Industry and our Labor Standards Unit and the Minnesota Department of Human Rights is accommodations. And our labor standards folks are, able to talk about accommodations, but the enforcement agency for the Minnesota Human Rights Act is the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. So those are two areas where we do have other state agencies that are much more involved than we are, but also we have information on our website for those things as well. So kind of an overview, and what I was asked to focus on today was a little bit more of the employee rights and responsibilities and the employer rights and responsibilities as related to COVID. So I'm going to kind of go through, but I welcome questions as we're going. And Krista, if you just want to jump in whenever a question comes through, or if you have a question you would like clarification on, I'm happy to take those as I go. So one of the big areas that we get questions on is when they need to be home, what they should do there. So I'm going to go through some of the executive order provisions that apply to that and some of the laws that apply to that situation. So the first thing to point out is that executive order, and it's been in a couple of executive orders, but the most recent, 20-74, does contain a work from home mandate. And I'm sure that people have heard this. Anybody who joins the DEED weekly calls has probably heard me talk about it. But essentially what the executive order says is that if you are a worker and you can complete the essential functions of your job from home, then you need to be working from home. Obviously, the thought behind this is if we can decrease the amount of people interacting with each other, that we're going to help kind of slow or stop the spread of COVID. So that mandate is still in place, and any complaints that the agencies have been receiving from employees saying, my employer's making me come to work, but I'm able to work from home. The Department of Human Rights has actually taken the lead on responding to those, and they have a work from home violations line. And I think it's slowed down because people kind of have figured it out, but initially they did get a lot of calls from people saying, I can work from home and my employer. That is a mandate in the executive order. There have been conversations throughout the pandemic about, do we change that? Can we allow some people to go back to work who could work from home, especially those people who don't have underlying health conditions or children that they're having to take care of with school and distance learning. So these are conversations that are ongoing. There's nothing immediate happening, but always a process as we're going through what restrictions we have in place and which restrictions can be lessened without creating too much of an additional health risk. So that's kind of the first, I think, underlying mandate out there about working. Then you have the folks who can't work from home, right? Who need to be at their place of employment, whether it's in retail or in a restaurant or in person in school. And what protections are there for those individuals who are unable to work? So I'm going to go through a federal law first, because we get a lot of questions on this. The Families First Coronavirus Response Act is a law that was passed federally and is overseen by the U.S. Department of Labor in their Wage and Hour Division. They are doing a lot of webinars specifically related to this law. People are interested. If you go on their website, I think they list overview, because this has been a widely used law and also a widely misunderstood law. So there are a lot of pitfalls. And I know that the U.S. Department of Labor has been receiving a lot of complaints. I also know that there have been lawsuits filed under this law as well. So there are two main leave provisions to that law. There is the emergency paid sick leave, or the EPSL, and also the expanded FMLA. And so I'll talk about and really it's best to keep those separate because they cover different reasons and also have different timeframes. So the emergency paid sick leave provides, and this is only for employers that have less than 500 employees. So employers with over 500 employees are not covered by this law. But employers with less than 500, they need to provide 2 weeks or 80 hours of paid sick leave to employees for a number of reasons set out in the law, including the employee is subject to an isolation or quarantine order. The employee has been advised by a healthcare provider to isolate related to, or self-quarantine due to concerns related to COVID-19. The employee is experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and seeking a medical diagnosis. Or the employee is caring for an individual who is subject to an isolation or quarantine order. So if my child either has COVID or has been exposed to COVID and needs to stay home, that would cover that. Otherwise, the other big one is if an employee is caring for a child whose school or place of care is closed due to COVID-19. So these, this paid leave is either, there is a capped amount, but it's either full pay for the first 3 reasons, so the care of yourself, or it's 2/3 pay for the care of the child, or somebody who's under your care who has been exposed or has COVID, or school or place of care is closed. With this is that if you are a private sector or nonprofit, you can receive a tax rebate for this pay that is provided under the emergency paid sick leave. That tax rebate, so this is a little disjointed, but all of the information about how to go about doing that, or the tax credit, how to go about doing that is all on the IRS website. Any questions about the specifics of the leave, you're going to find on the USDOL website. So the IRS is in charge of the tax credits. The USDOL is in charge of the specifics of who gets the leave, when they're entitled to it, what the reasons are. So that's the only other thing I'll note is there is an exception for businesses with less than 50 employees, but the exception only applies for the last reason, which is if you have a child who is out of school or out of daycare because of COVID. So their school or place of care is closed because of COVID. But the exception is also very narrow. It's only if it jeopardizes the business if you were to provide the leave. And remember, the leave is, you do get the tax credits. So it's been a pretty narrow exception. And in fact, I was just on a CLE yesterday with a management side lawyer who said he tells all of his clients not to use the exception because it's so incredibly narrow, it would be very hard to use. That's not my advice, but it's something he said that he tells his clients. One of the things that I think has been has not come across pretty clear is that exception, that under 50 employees exception, does only apply to that one reason. So I know that the USDOL did take action against a Minnesota company recently that had denied that leave to their employees who had been exposed and or contracted COVID. And the USDOL went in and made them restore all of their accrued leave and had them pay out of the emergency paid sick leave. So that is something that I think people are getting confused about. And then the other half is the the expanded FMLA. And what that is it is a 10-week paid period at 2/3 pay when an employee does not, they have a child whose school or place of care is closed due to COVID. So the first 2 weeks of a 12-week period could fall under the emergency paid sick leave, and then the next 10 weeks could fall under the expanded FMLA. So this law, the FFCRA, would provide somebody who does not have school, because full distance learning, would provide them potentially with 12 weeks of 2/3 pay if they work for an employer who is eligible. The USDOL has also issued some clarifications on how this would apply to hybrid learning. And they have said that on the days that the child does not have school, they would be eligible for the FFCRA leave. But if the child does have an option for in-person attendance and the parents choose not to send their child, then that would not qualify. That is what the USDOL has, how they have interpreted the law. And they have that guidance on their FAQ, which I believe is well over 100 questions now. But you can go on and you can search through them and typically find questions or answers to all of these types of questions. So that's kind of a really broad overview of the FFCRA. There is a lot of specifics that can kind of affect how it goes one way or another, but a lot of that, like I said, is addressed in those FAQs. So the other area that comes up often when you have people who are unable to work from home, who wouldn't qualify for this leave under the FFCRA, but are unable to go to work because they have an underlying health condition. And that's really where the Minnesota Human Rights Act and the ADA come into play. Under both of those laws, an individual with a disability has the right to request a reasonable accommodation. And that is often described as an interactive process, right? So the employer has to engage with the employee, has to talk about what type of accommodations the employer could provide to the employee to basically keep them safe, to lessen their risk. That could include maybe some accommodations that would allow somebody to work from home. If that's not possible, it might include a different shift so that they're not exposed to as many people. It could include certain personal protective equipment. But really, the possibilities are really endless and really need to be specific to the workplace and what are the safety and health hazards that that individual is presented with, and what types of accommodations can put that person in a place that protects them. You know, I think a lot of people talk about it as well, that it could be leaves,